Well, I've got it right at the top of the hour, so I'll go ahead and introduce myself. And thank you for coming by. My name is Dustin Childs. I am with Trend Micro's Zero Day Initiative. I started my career active duty Air Force. Way back in 1997, they assigned me to the unit to catch hackers. That would be the Air Force Computer Emergency Response Team. It was a different time back in 1997. The internet was a very different place. Yeah, if you don't mind. Those loud people. We no, you were in the right room. But it was an interesting time, before YouTube, before Twitter, before everything else. But I learned a lot, did a lot of architecture back there too. 2008, I went to Microsoft. I was part of the Microsoft Security Response Center, which means I did Patch Tuesday, which means I rebooted your computer at some point. Let me apologize for that now. I did some interesting things, like if you were old enough to remember Conficker, that was my case. If you've ever heard of Stuxnet, that was my case as well. So did some interesting stuff there. Glad the young people weren't here when I said 1997, so I don't need to know what grade they were in. And then in 2015, I joined the Zero Day Initiative. And that's where I work now. I'm the head of threat awareness. So I handle communications and outreach and really look at all of the Trend Micro threat research and kind of see what we do. What the ZDI is we are the world's largest vendor agnostic bug bounty program. That means we buy bugs in Microsoft, Apple, Google, Dell, IBM, you name it, we pretty much buy bugs in that. So we buy a whole lot of bugs. Last year, we published over 1,900 advisories. Those are all bugs we purchased or found ourselves. So in other words, we have done a lot of bug disclosures. We know what it's like dealing with vendors. For 20 years, we have been saying, patch your systems, right? This is just patch it. It's not feasible always. When people say just patch it to me, I usually smack them on the nose and say that's not a good idea. By the way, I like to joke around a lot, but I'm not always good at it. So if you think to yourself, was he kidding? Yes, I was. It wasn't just that funny. So I thought it was. But please feel free to laugh, and these are jokes. So yeah, just patch it is really bad advice. But we really don't have much better advice when it comes to preventing network stuff. I mean, we are defenders, and a lot of what we do is actually just risk mitigation. We have to identify the risk in order to mitigate it. But the vendors are making that much harder for us. And also patching has a cost. And there's a lot of different ways, a lot of different calculus. You can say, okay, it costs 3 cents to patch this machine. It costs $3 to patch this machine. Whatever formula you use, there's a cost to patching machines, no matter how much you automate it. And this is going to become a big problem for us because I always say we're the three unders, all of us in this room. We're understaffed, we're underfunded, and we're under pressure, right? Is there anyone who is not one of those three unders? I've never met anyone. I've met somebody who said they're a fourth under. You go, yeah, I'm underpaid. So we're all the three. I'm fairly compensated, but we're all the three unders, right? Understaffed, underfunded, under pressure. We have to do our resource allocation very distinctly. And if we get bad information, we're going to misallocate resources, and then we're going to have risk that we didn't want. So we get these miscalculations of risk. And this is where we start. So first of all, we have inconsistencies with the calculations of CVSS. If you're not familiar with CVSS, this is a score, 1 to 10, that we give bugs, 10 being the most severe. This is not whether or not CVSS is good. That's a different talk. But this is a CVSS is not what all CVSS thinks of it. For example, there was a bug in Amazon Linux that was rated at a 9.8 since it could expose sensitive credentials. However, based on real world factors, Tenable rated it as a 5.9. So which one do you pay? That's a huge disparity. You're going from 9.8, ring all the bells, do everything you can to patch it fast, to, we'll get there. And that's what it is. And a CVSS base score does not equal risk. For example, and this is one thing, the QR code here leads to a study by the Rand Institute and such institute that says only about 5.5% of bugs actually disclosed actually get exploited. So if you can focus on the right 5.5%, how much of your resources are you saving? And then not every 10 is a 10. For example, I made a very bad decision one Christmas. I published a CVSS 10 that was not important, but it was in an optional component that is rarely used, and it had been patched for 3 months, not really thinking it's December 23rd. What could possibly go wrong? I pushed this advisory out. People panicked because they saw a CVSS 10. Merry Christmas. Here's your present that's going to ruin your holidays. Yeah, here's your lump of coal. And it's like, calm down, people. This is in a optional Linux kernel module that you're not running. I promise you, you're not running this. So it doesn't matter. And then we have this thing. This is not a question of whether or not, this is not a talk about whether or not CVEs are good. That's also a different talk. But the common perception is that one CVE equals one bug. And it's simply not true, at least not in our understanding of it. For example, we have 4 different candidates here, 4 distinct bugs that are all oob-reads or oob-writes. However, when SAP put a CVE on it, it said 1 CVE. Now, I understand that if you have one root cause that's fixing a bunch of similar bugs, that should be 1 CVE. However, that's not the case that we found. We found CVE numbering authorities that will take an oob-writes and a use after free and a stack-based buffer overflow and all these different types of bugs, shove them into 1 CVE, and then send them out. And well, what's the problem with that? Well, if I'm evaluating a piece of software to put in my enterprise and I see it has 1 CVE in it, I might not know the depth of what the risk is really if it's 50 bugs in that 1 CVE. So that's another thing where we're looking at risk and we're trying to reallocate our resources. If I can't accurately tell how bad or good a product is based on CVEs, I might not be able to tell the risk. And I can tell you right now, as someone who buys bugs, when I buy a bug, what I'm literally doing is licensing intellectual property. That's the actual act of buying a bug. And that's true whether it's us or whether it's BugCrowd or whether it's Hackeroni or whether you're selling directly to Microsoft or Google or whomever. You enter a licensing agreement. My licensing agreement says once it's passed, you can talk about it. There are licensing agreements out there that say you can never disclose this ever. So you have products out there that look like they have never had a CVE. They've had plenty of CVEs, they've had plenty of bugs, but because the licensing was so strict, it was never publicly documented. And I'm not going to name names, just going to say it might rhyme with CrowdStrike. But this is a common problem, and I will just say that the worst offender is the SCADA, ICS, Industrial Control Systems world. They are very, very good at this. Very good at combining CVEs. And then there's the security advisories themselves. I have a sickness, and it's not just the cold I'm recovering from. Since January of 2008, I have worked every single Patch Tuesday except for 3. My grandmother's funeral, my sister's wedding, and federal jury duty. Those are the only 3 Patch Tuesdays I've taken off since 2008. It is a sickness for me because I love Patch Tuesday because that's when we make a difference and things get patched. But a couple of years ago, Microsoft decided to remove the descriptions from the security advisories. So CVSS is all you need. That's all you need to determine risk. It was widely criticized. It has not changed. And to give you they used to put up a brief little executive summary that says, here's a DNS problem. Now you get this. That's it. So again, even if CVSS is perfect, which we know it isn't, you've just taken away everything. And I monthly beg Microsoft, with denial of service bugs, is this a blue screen? Does it automatically restart? Do you have to manually enter C to like get your system back up? Basic minimal stuff, and they don't tell you this stuff. So yeah, it's kind of the death of plain language. We see security advisories that say fix several security issues. Oh, okay, which ones? We see vendors that say we do not publish security advisories. Oh, that's rude. But even more rude is like putting the advisories behind a paywall. It's not good. Excuse me. And I am getting over a cold, so if I sound stuffy, I apologize. But yeah, this may or may not be vodka. But yeah, so yeah, exactly. This is an issue that we see. And honestly, this is the biggest problem that we see is placebo patches. Bugs are hard to find. I know because I spend a lot of money on them. Unless it's the second Tuesday of every month. Then Microsoft just came out and said, was it this week? I can't remember. Here's 117 bugs. Okay, great. Now all the attackers go, well, I know where the bugs are now. Let me go reverse engineer the patches and actually come out with some exploit code. It can take as little as an hour to do that. It can take as a little, according to the FBI, active exploits can be seen within 2 days of patches being made available. None of you patch your enterprises within 2 days. And I don't mean that as an insult, that's just the truth. I had one person tell me that. I didn't call him a liar to his face, but I called him that behind his back. Because I know you cannot roll out patches in 2 days. But the bad guys can roll out exploits in 2 days. I'll tell you a quick story because I'm ahead on time right here. When I was at Microsoft, I shipped a bulletin for Windows kernel. And it was a fix for Windows kernel, rolls out. We start getting reports about blue screens. Microsoft, if there's a problem, first thing you do is reproduce the problem internally, right? So we could not figure out how to get a blue screen. We're applying patches in different order. We're trying different hardware. Keep getting calls about blue screen, blue screen, blue screen. We have over 150,000 reports globally. Actually, it was 150,000 just in North America of blue screens from this bad patch. And then finally we got a call from somebody said, I got this blue screen because I applied this patch and I happen to live in near Dallas. And they go, great, we'll buy your computer. They said, what? Yep, we screwed it up. We're going to buy you a new computer. Okay. So we got that computer and we took it into our labs and immediately we saw, they think that a rootkit on it. You think that matters? Yeah, that matters because the rootkit because it turns out that people who write malware don't read MSDN. And if you read MSDN, it says don't hook into the kernel this way because it's dangerous, because when we update the kernel, it could lead to a blue screen. So it took us like a week and a half to finally fix it at Microsoft. They had a new version of the bootkit out within 24 hours that was compatible with the patch. So if you patched fast and you had a bootkit, yeah, that's what happens. Placebo patches, however, are worse because they don't actually fix the problem. So what I'm trying to say with that story is having the existence of a patch actually increases your risk a little bit just because now everybody knows there's a bug there and it doesn't matter that there's a fix. And these are so placebo patches are ones that make no effective changes or where the vulnerability is not fully mitigated.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yep.
If you don't patch, then it gets worse. But if you do patch, you're a target.
You're a target. But for me, this is expensive because their bugs so nice. I had to buy them twice. And that QR code leads to another talk that we did about purchasing bugs multiple times. And it's frustrating because if I buy a bug and then the researcher says, well, I can bypass the patch, they don't just give that to me free out of the kindness of their hearts. I mean, this is a transactional society we live in. Now I have to buy it twice. And, okay, so here's an example. We bought an Advantech. It's a popular SCADA product. So we bought one bug that had a problem that was implementation of this iOctal in the web services process. And then it was patched. Oh, I lost my mouse. There we go. And then we bought it again. And then we bought it again. So we bought the same bug essentially 3 times. Now, this is bad for us because I'm spending money 3 times, but it's also bad for you because, like I said, whatever your calculus is for how much it costs to install a patch, well, now it's times 3. So if it's 3 cents, if it's $3, now it's times 3, no matter what. And it's not just Advantech or ICS. This is look, Adobe. So we got this one PDF bug, and this is I love PDF bugs. They're very popular. They're used in malware all the time, and they're usually ingenious the way they work. This one is a really good one. They sent us this beautiful proof of concept code. You really don't need to understand what's going on here. Let's see if I got the laser pointer going on. The only thing you need to know is the laser pointer doesn't work.
Fresh batteries.
Hang on, let me put it into the ON position. Okay, so we have a buffer here. Yeah, 101. Oh, okay, there it is. We have a buffer here that we're going to overflow, and that's a link. So that's a very nice thing. Here's the patch that they came up with. Right, you notice that they just took the value and stuck it right in there. Within an hour, the attacker, let's see, oh, there you go. See, I pointed that out. The attacker sent us this new proof of concept to get around the patch. A couple people see it. All you had to do is change the link. We expected there to be some math involved in the patch to actually calculate whether or not this buffer was going to be overflown. Yeah, that overflowed. So now it is.
Just like a energy, you change one value.
Hey, proof of concept doesn't hit. It's fixed. Ship it. But you're not fixing anything, right? Yeah. So let's talk about SharePoint. So first of all, I want to back up and do this part right. A vendor ships a bug. And let me thank you for that because I've been gainfully employed my entire adult life because vendors ship bugs. Somebody contacts us and says, hey, we've got a remote code execution in SharePoint, all supported versions. You want that? I say, yes. Yes, I do want that. He sold us that bug report. And of course, we reported it to Microsoft. This is one of the reasons that people actually come to us is we handle this business right here. That one little dotted line, vendor notified, can be very contentious for researchers, especially if you don't have a good reputation or you're just getting started. People ignore you a lot, whereas ZDI, we've been around since 2005. So people tend to pay attention to us because we publish enough stuff and we have a reputation. So we handle this. They shipped a fix for it on February 12th. I said part of my role is communications. One thing I do is blog. This is a really cool bug. So I wanted to blog about it. So the patch is available. My mouse is literally scrolling over to the button that says save and publish on Squarespace because I was going to publish a blog. And then the researcher sent us this panic email saying, don't publish the blog because I can get around that patch. And he did it in about 45 minutes. So we have to purchase the bug again. And they ship another patch 28 days later. I just realized that's kind of a zombie reference too. That's nice. And then we published the blog on March 13th because I wanted to make sure it happened. And then we saw attacks in the wild because of course we did because we knew it was a good bug. Interesting thing here is there was a third revision of that patch after attacks were in the wild. So were you protected? If you installed version 2 of the patch, which you had to look for, by the way, it's very hard to get notified of patch revisions. If you didn't install version 2, you certainly were not protected from those attacks in the wild. If you were on version 2, were you still safe or did you need version 3? And that's one of those things where it is challenging. And hey, I've got the Trend Micro logo on my sleeve. We are not immune to this. We had this purchase, got that CVE. Then we purchased this bug, which bypassed it. So we published that CVE. Now there's space on the screen, and you've been paying attention. So guess what happened next? Yeah, we purchased that bug, and we got that CVE. For us, we actually like this. For ZDI, I should say, we actually like this. Obviously, for Trend, we don't. But it's an opportunity for us to go to our product development teams and go, you're doing it wrong. Here's how to do it right. And they listen to us because they don't like to do patches either. Hey, Dustin, yes? Do you have any other examples? Oh, sure, I have receipts. I wish I could say this was an unusual problem. I wish I could say this was an isolated problem, but this is a problem that happens all the time. One of the things we see right now on our threat hunting team is, and again, this is an aside, but I love this. I'm fascinated the way attackers shift techniques as defenses come about. About a year and a half ago, Microsoft really hammered macros. And they're like, we're not going to allow macros. We're going to turn them all off. Macros were really popular. And I totally agree with Microsoft on doing this. What's happened is all the attackers have shifted now away from macros. What now they are using is they're bypassing mark of the web. Mark of the web, if you don't know, it's a little token that gets put on files, operating system, Office, things like that, should show you smart screen saying, hey, you downloaded this from an unsafe location. You sure you want to open that PDF or that Word doc or whatever? But they bypass that, and then they open it, code execution, malware installed, here we go. That has been patched 6 times, if that I'm counting correctly, including this last patch Tuesday. They still have not fully patched that because the patch is so insufficient. And again, this happens all the time. It happens with Dell, it happens with Avanti, it happens with Google. We just saw it with Firefox too, where they had an incomplete patch and then it ended up getting exploited in the wild, and now they're patching again. So if you run Firefox, please make sure you update. Any questions at this point? Okay, I'm going to keep rolling it. So there is an entire industry around patching. And it's odd to me, but I'm part of that industry, so whatever. People mostly don't realize it. There are third-party patch management tools. There are in-day analysis tools. There are red team and things to look at whether or not you've applied the patches. And then, there's the whole critical element of this. And I'm sorry if I didn't put your logo up here. I only had so much space in the little house because it's a cottage industry. Get it? It's a little house. That's fine. I just laugh at that. But yeah, so I mean, the fact is, you have to have patch management software. You can't just. I mean, I think they're turning off WSUS even because it's gone beyond that. You have to have some sort of vulnerability scanner. So like, look and make sure that you actually that the patches got applied. You have to have some in-day analysis. We have it. Exodus has it. Flexera has it. I mean, so pointing that out, and then you got to do that. You got to do all the stuff. So it's really an industry. But there are other pieces in this industry that I want to talk about that we don't talk about very much. And that is when we look at disclosure timelines, we look at time to fix, right? So when I publish an advisory, a ZDI, I say vendor notified on this date, vendor patched on this date. We have a 120-day disclosure policy that makes sure people do not ignore our reports because we will release a certain amount of information. O-Day, we are called the 0-day initiative for a reason. And it wasn't just cute branding. It was because we will actually drop 0-day on people. But there's also time to patch, time to reverse, and time to exploit. And these are very different timelines. So time to patch, I have heard as much for things that are not critical, like people getting critical patches in 6 months. That's ridiculous. That is horrible. The time that most people will say is 90 days for most patches. Again, one person told me 48 hours. That person is going to hell. They lied. They lied. But yeah, so I mean, it's tough. And I've talked to people like with OT and IT technologies, and like, I can't find the device. I have to touch the device to update it, and I can't find it. It's in a factory somewhere. I can ping it. I can't find it. So it's tough. And I'm not saying anyone like you should be ashamed because you can't patch in 48 hours. I'm just saying you can't patch in 48 hours. But the time to reverse is very short. The time to exploit is very short. And it's one of these things why if you rely only on patches, you have to rely on these other things too. So, and your risk assessment may change post-release. So for example, something may be released that is not currently under active attack, but you know it's going to be released very quickly, and it's going to be targeted very quickly. So let me give you an example of that. We also run this contest called Pondone. Anyone ever heard of Pondone besides me? Hey, a couple people. All right. So Pondone is a real simple conceit. Started in 2007 with a MacBook. The conference organizer at CanSec in Vancouver said, again, 2007 is a long time ago in the internet world. This is back, if you're old like me, there were commercials that said, I'm a Mac, and he was a cool guy. Like, I'm a PC, and I'm a nerd. So, but, like, oh, Macs are completely security proof. It's like, nah, maybe not. So he said, I've got a brand new MacBook right here. I'm going to put it on the conference network. If you own it, hack it, you own it. It's a brand new MacBook. Because ZDI, would you buy the bug? And we said, yeah, we'll give you 10 grand for it. 10 grand, first Pondone. Last Pondone I ran, awarded over $1 million. I awarded $3.5 million for Pondones last year. So it's kind of grown a little bit, but the concept is still the same. In fact, the next one is in 10 days in Ireland, and it's consumer, small office, home office devices. So get a network printer. We're going to put it on the stage. Contestant comes up. He gets 5 minutes to try and pwn it. If he pwns it, he gets himself a new network printer, and for that one, 20 grand. We've got iPhones and Galaxies and Pixels there. We've got Echoes and other smart speakers. We've got wireless routers. The fun part of that one is we have a special challenge called the Soho Smash Up, where you have to start on the WAN interface of a wireless router, compromise the router, and then jump from the router to another device internal to the LAN, whether it be a printer or a speaker or something else. And that gets you both devices and $100,000. We've also done Pondone Automotive, where we've awarded Tesla Model 3. We partnered with Tesla for that. And then Pondone Vancouver, we still run, so $3.5 million. And I actually leave for Ireland tomorrow, so to go set up. So it should be a lot of fun. But this is something that happened at Pondone in 2001. We have a special bonus if you can hit Chrome and Edge, since they're both based on Chromium, with the same bug. We call that, double shot. And yeah, they were able to do that. So somebody came in, Bruno Keith and Nicholas Baumstock. They won $100,000 at Pondone and a laptop, because they owned the laptop. We, of course, reported to Google. The cool thing about Pondone is, too, once you do the demonstration on stage, we take you into a disclosure room, and then you tell us all the details, right? And then we get the vendor in, and they tell them all the details. And it's really cool because the vendors can see it right away, and they start working on it. And in fact, they checked in something pretty quickly, within like 48 hours. Problem is, they checked it into the open source JavaScript engine, but not into the browser. So somebody was able to reverse engineer that check-in, and they had working exploit code before the vendor patched, and then Edge patched the following day. So that's how quickly something can be reverse engineered. That's amazing. So there are different industries and different approaches. So this is a standard release cycle, traditional disclosure. That's what we've pretty much been talking about. What we just saw with Chrome, what they do is like more of a rapid release cycle where you get minimal disclosure. They don't tell you a lot about the bugs. They just give it a title and a CVS. Well, no, Chrome doesn't even give you a CVSS score. They give you like critical, high, medium, low. They don't even tell you impact, privilege escalation, code execution, denial of service, or whatever. But they do it quickly. They patch much faster. They just don't document a lot. Then there's over-the-air updates. This is really hard on us. For example, if you buy a phone in Singapore and take it to Finland and update, you get completely different updates than if you were to buy it in Finland and take it to Singapore. Hardware is very dependent on where you purchase. They have regional rollouts. So for us, as part of Pondone, we make sure everything is up to date. But up to date where? And up to date in which country? So we have to work with the vendor to make sure that we get it up to date. So you have regional rollouts where maybe something is patched and maybe it isn't, We saw this with Tesla too. Tesla's, their in-vehicle infotainment systems used to be based on WebKit, but thanks to their participation in Pwn2Own, they changed and updated Chromium. So they updated their entire web browser interface based on stuff we did, and then rolled that out to the fleet. But of course, that doesn't happen all at once. It's not like every Tesla just reboots at the same time. So it just, well, actually, every Tesla might. The Cybertrucks might. I don't know. I'm sorry if you own a Tesla. They hate my jokes. They're good guys, though. They have a really good security team. But yeah, so that rollout can take place at different times. And again, you have limited disclosure, so you might not know. And then there's like the industrial control systems. And this is what's really hard. You get limited disclosures, you get paywalls. And this is also a time when vendors will work with customers to evade regulators. And this is something I'm furious about. And I've had a CEO of a company tell me this, that they purposely downplay the CVSS of some of their bugs, because if it's above a certain number, like if it's above 7, customers have to roll it out in a certain amount of time. Well, these customers happen to be universities that work on a semester schedule. Yeah, and they don't want to roll it out. So the customer calls the vendor and says, don't rate it this high because then it puts a burden on us. That's incomprehensible to me, because you are actively ignoring the wolf. Like, oh, here's a wolf in sheep's clothing. I don't see it. It's like object permanence with a toddler. It's like, oh, where'd you go? Oh, there you are. Oh, where'd you go? Like, you're playing peekaboo with Risk. I mean, this is terrible. But a CEO told me this and told me that his customers want it. Yeah. So that hurts. But and then more vendors, more problems. So Pwn2Own Ireland has traveled quite a bit. We used to call it mobile Pwn2Own because it was only phones. Then we added stuff, so we called it Pwn2Own Tokyo because that's where it took place. Then the pandemic happened. I don't know if you guys knew that. And then so we called it Pwn2Own Austin because we have offices in Austin. We could do it remotely there. And then it went to Toronto, and then our office in Toronto closed, and now it's in Ireland. So it wanders a bit. But when it was in Austin, we thought of renaming it Pwn to Rome. I think that was trademarked instead. So this was an interesting case in Pwn2Own Austin. Western Digital was compromised because we have a network attached storage devices in this contest as well, because those are pretty cool. And Western Digital was compromised, and it turned out that the part of the NAS that was actually compromised was an open source thing. And it was an open source thing that was used by a lot of people. So we had to call CERT and go, listen, you need to call everyone. I had this happen at Microsoft too. This was funny. Active template libraries. Those were published, and this was back when ActiveX was still a big deal. So you would go get the template library and do stuff on that. There was a typo in one of the libraries. So if you used it a certain way, you could get code execution. Now, here's a question. If you publish a library that's public, how many people use it? Well, we don't actually know. I mean, because, so we can kind of tell, like from some stats, it's like, oh, well, Disney uses this, Flickr uses this, all these image upload places use this. So that was awkward. It was like, hello, Facebook. Yeah, it's Microsoft. Yeah, we saw the movie. Yeah, none of the twins were dicks. It's cool. Hey, listen, remember that code we shared? Yeah, you should get tested. Because that's what happens. So now you're in a place where like Western Digital updated, but did QNAP, did Synology, did all of these other people? What about those random Chinese NAS that you just get off Temu? So now you have something that's out there. So you have real risk from good faith efforts. Patches bring attention. And that's kind of what we want, right? One of our big things, one of my big tenets is disclosure drives action. And vendors disclose stuff all the time. They're called patches. The action is apply the patch. We disclose stuff sometimes, and the action is, I want you to move faster because you're being too slow with this. It should not take you 300 days to fix a simple heap overflow. You should not have a simple heap overflow, much less take you 300 days to fix it. So patches shine a gigantic spotlight on that component, but they inadvertently also increase risks. And, you know, anyone heard of Log4Shell? Log4j? Yeah, this is one of those prime examples of it. I also love that that's the official logo for Log4Shell. We actually, the one April Fool's joke the ZDI ever did is we offered logo services for your bug. If you were, I thought it was kind of funny. I was alone in that. But anyway, that's the actual logo for Log4Shell. That has a long tail. We're still finding stuff that's vulnerable to that stuff. And it's, yeah, it can be very bad. So, yeah. And then let's take a look at the attack surface. Anyone remember Print Nightmare? Print Nightmare was a very bad thing that was under active exploit. Printer drivers. What is it with printers? I mean, for real. It's like the simplest thing. You just hit print and you want a sheet of paper there with some stuff on it. But, you know, I mean, it's in office space that it's such a thing. So anyway, exposing attack surface. This CVE gets published over the next few months. We get all these other CVEs that get published. The ones with asterisks are the ones that were actively exploited. And you look at it, and yeah, it exposes the attack surface. So you see it again and again and again and again. And if you back it up a little bit further, there was that one that kind of kicked everything off. And then all this happened. If you pay attention to patches like I do, you will have seen a rash, and I think that is the best word to use for it, a rash of SQL patches coming out from Microsoft. None of them are that critical. They all require a user to connect to a malicious SQL database. So, okay, it would take a lot of social engineering for that to happen, but I still have to go out and patch all of these SQL servers, these SQL clients, blah, blah, blah. It's been month after month after month after month of this stuff, and it's just a steady drumbeat because that attack surface is so bad. And this is kind of the example of it, is when you have a patch that really exposes a bad attack surface. Remote routing, RRAS, that old protocol, huge attack surface. There's one company in China right now that's just buzzing the hell out of it and just getting bug reports in all the time.
Protected one.
Yep. So how do we determine risk in this? First of all, why is this happening? And that's a good question. I think we can look at a lot of things as to why it happens as a lack of investment in sustained engineering. Everybody wants to ship something, nobody wants to support it. Because there's no fun, you don't get support parties, you get ship parties, right? You know, so that's the thing. And that's a problem. And then a lack of QA. When Satya Nadella took over Microsoft from Bill Gates and Ballmer, the first thing he did was get rid of QA. It used to be a holy trinity in Microsoft, dev, test, PM, and he got rid of test, like the devs will test. And as a shareholder, I can't complain too much about his performance. As a person who deals with software, I definitely disagree with that statement because my Microsoft stock has gone through the roof, much better than the Ballmer years. But yeah, the quality of the code has gone down so much that they now have to, like, they've put forth, oh, we're doing this initiative, we're doing this initiative, and it's like, yeah, you're also testifying before Congress as to why you had so many problems. So there's a lack of QA, and not just QA with security understanding, where they actually understand the security implications. Those people are expensive. They tend to be on the older side of life too. You youngins, go do QA because you could like survive forever. But they were some of the first people to be laid off and let go. So you have human error, and there's no transparency. This is what kills me, because I'm naturally a storyteller, and I never let facts get in the way of a good story either. But there's no transparency in, like, vendors just tell us the problem. And this is the thing that kills me is vendors think that there's some huge negative thing that's going to happen, but I've measured it. When you release a patch, the news is generally positive. And the Windows team used to hate me with a passion because we would get scored on our press. They would release a new version of an operating system. I would release Patch Tuesday, and I got better scores than they did. And it's like, how do you do that? Like, first of all, I know how the system works, so I hacked the system. Second of all, I'm a hacker. You bring me in here, it's like, you're going to get measured on this. Well, how do you measure that? No one's ever asked us that before. Like, really? Okay. So it's like, oh, that's how you do it? Okay, well, then I'll just write the sentence that way. Okay. But it's like people want the good news. And the good news is, hey, it's fixed. There's something to do here. And they don't believe that. They believe it's bad. So there's no desire for transparency when it comes to advisories and fixes. And that's very frustrating. And I don't know how to break that. I've got an issue right now with the CEO who's like looping in our CEO. Like, I know this is patched, but can you hold off on your advisory? It's like, why would I hold off on the advisory when it's a patched bug? Well, we think, we want to give our people time to patch. Like, how will they know to patch if we don't publish the advisory? Like, well, we just want to give them more time to patch. What about this blog that you published? Why are you taking this out on me? So it's the same thing that we look at every single day. But how does this affect our risk evaluation? And this is what really bothers me. Enterprises do not have a clear view of the true risk to their networks right now. And that is problematic. That's very problematic because one of the biggest things we have to do is, and I've been on the end of that call. Hey, Dustin. Hey, Sergeant Childs. Hey, whatever. What's my risk here? Do I need to care? Just saw this thing on CNN with this CrowdStrike outage. Do we have that? Do we need to care? What's going on? And I pick on CrowdStrike because that's fun. But I mean, it could be anything. It could be, like, hey, I heard that there's a Windows outage. Or AWS just, bit the bucket. Like, what's going on? So we need a clear view of risk to be able to answer to our C-levels and to be able to defend our networks. We spend time and money that we shouldn't have to spend time and money on. You shouldn't have to patch it 5 times. Shouldn't have to patch it however many times. I shouldn't have to buy it 5 times. And incomplete or faulty patches are, in some ways, more risk than no patch at all. If a bug exists in the forest, nobody exploits it, does it make a noise? It's a philosophical question. Can't prove an unknown, but yeah, so it's one of those things. It's almost bad. So here's the actions you can take. And I use